Welcome to the Broadway Podcast, the musical theater history podcast where a couple of doctors sit around and talk about Broadway. I'm your co-host, Dr. Kristin Stultz Pressley, joined as always by Dr. Tracey Brent-Chessum. Tracey, we are in what we call the home stretch.
We are indeed.
Does it feel like it's been
8 years? Like, I'm just like holding on for dear life.
Yes, I am ready.
We've been sitting here before we even hit record talking about all the things that we're doing that we probably don't have to do, but we just are doing anyway because it feels very important, you know?
And it makes our children happy.
That too.
Let's be honest. And it makes our children happy. So
yes.
That's, there we are.
What, in the last episode, we talked about how we were wrapping up the school year, and now we're like, oh gosh, we're just as busy as we were.
That's the thing, is like, I thought it would slow down, and here we are.
Nope.
I know. So what's the main event today, Tracey?
The main event. So we're still in our all original micromester, and we're talking about Shucked, the musical. Yeah. Shucked. That is the greatest title ever.
It's a great name.
The puns in this show, but this premiered on Broadway in 2023.
Yeah, it's a great setup. And it's one of those, we've talked about the marketing. You in particular have talked about the marketing, like with Phantom of the Opera, with just the mask, or with Les Mis, with just that, that girl with the broom.
Cosette.
Yeah, Cosette. Yes.
The little waif girl.
The little, yeah. And how iconic those have become. The cat eyes, that sort of thing. And Shucked really followed that marketing by using an ear of corn.
Just
and you
an
just
ear
see
of
a
corn.
little bit of it. Yeah.
And you're just like laughing because you're like, what is this about?
Yes. Well, if you are laughing at that ear of corn because you're wondering what it is about, let me tell you, it would be my pleasure to walk you through that, because this one really is tailor-made for me. I have said so many times that the reason I love to go to the theater is to laugh and be entertained, right? And so this one has that in spades. Not only does it have laugh a minute, I mean, it is hilarious. The book was written by Robert Horn, whom we'll talk about more in just a minute. But Robert Horn, if you saw Tootsie, which I did and loved, then you know how... Tootsie was a show that I saw in New York with my dad, and we saw two shows.
The musical, not the movie.
Tootsie the musical. Yeah, it was 2019. I was there doing research for my Dorothy Fields book, and I went up with my dad to New York. He had to go for work, so I went with him and worked, and we saw some shows. We saw The Prom, which was hilarious, and directed by Casey Nicholaw, my guy.
Your guy.
And co-written by Bob Martin, who also co-wrote The Drowsy Chaperone. My guy.
Also your guy.
My guy. I love.
If you haven't figured this out, she has a list of guys.
I do have my guys, and there's some of my guys. And Robert Horn wrote the book for Tootsie, which we also saw that trip. And it is hilarious. It is so funny. And so if you know that work, then you know kind of the tone of Shucked. It's just a ton of fun, but it also has a really sweet heart to it. So you add to that country music written by one of probably my favorite contemporary non-musical theater writer, who is Brandy Clark. And this is my sweet spot right here. Shucked is my sweet spot. So having said that, let me tell you about Shucked and where it came from and how it got to where it is now and all of those things. But it starts off, well, before we talk about Shucked, we have to talk about a long-running variety show, which aired in America, that was started by a couple of Canadians. It runs in America from 1969 to 1992.
I had no idea it ran that long.
I did not either. Did not either. And that show is called Hee Haw. Hee Haw. Which, interestingly enough, used a donkey as its icon. A braying donkey was its Phantom of the Opera mask, right?
I love it.
Yeah. But this was a variety show. If you're not familiar with it, you can certainly Google it. You can find clips on YouTube. But it was a variety show where you would have guest artists come on, most of them country music singers or comedians, and they would just do sketches and songs about life in rural America.
Yeah. And it's meant to be that counter, right? To things like, SNL or
That's right.
Or in some ways, like the Carol Burnett show, which, feels very kind of like they're all trying to like hit at different segments of folks.
That's exactly right. And it knew its audience, right? It wasn't making fun of rural America. It was in on the joke because it was part of it. It was like, we're one of you, right? Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't offensive, like it was lampooning that life. It was just letting them laugh at themselves. And so it was enormously successful. It runs, like I said, 1969 to 1992. It then goes off the air. But remains, reruns, you can buy the DVDs at Cracker Barrel. You can watch it on YouTube.
You can still buy DVDs?
Yes. Believe it. I don't know how you'd watch them.
I don't know. I know.
But anyway, so in 2011, Opry Entertainment Group, which of course is one of the major producing heads of the Grand Ole Opry in Asheville, Tennessee, they own the rights to Hee Haw. And they decide that maybe this would make a really good musical because it probably, I don't know this, but it might have been inspired by the jukebox musical thing, thinking, hey, this is a known catalog, not necessarily of songs, but it's a known entity. Yeah. What if we try to exploit it to, introduce the franchise to a whole new generation, that sort of thing.
And they started developing this idea in 2011?
2011.
Wow, crazy.
Yep. Yeah, and it probably had been in somebody's brain before that, but 2011 is when it starts to get off the ground. And that's when they bring in Robert Horn. So let me tell you a little bit about Robert Horn, because you would expect that he was, born and bred in rural America to be the first guy brought in to do this musical adaptation. But in fact, he wasn't. He had the kind of childhood that he described as only Charles Dickens could do justice to.
Oh, cheaps.
Yeah. So not necessarily, unicorns and rainbows. But nevertheless, his mother was, for a time, Ed Sullivan's secretary. So he grew up in and around New York City. His grandfather had been a vaudeville dancer, and when he was just a baby, Robert Horn's father left the family. There was Robert, and he had two siblings, and his mother, though she tried her very best to raise her three children on her own, she was plagued with mental health issues throughout her life, and finally at age 9, she surrendered the three children to foster care, and the children were split up. They weren't allowed to stay together.
Oh, so sad.
Yeah, very sad, very sad. So they went to separate places. And, Robert remembers he, like so many people do, developed kind of this armor where he would tell jokes to avoid being beaten up by, either the different families he was living with or people at school, things like that. That became the facade, the mask that he wore he was a funny guy. And we hear that a lot in show business, right? That trope. So at any rate, he ends up at NYU on a full scholarship. That's how talented this kid is. And he studies playwriting, and while he's studying playwriting at NYU, he's working the comedy clubs around New York, and that's really how he hones his chops to become the comedic writer that he became. So in the 80s, he goes out to LA to see his mom and sister, and he ends up
reunited at this point.
That's right, in adulthood, and he ends up sticking around, right? He becomes a writer and producer for the television show Designing Women,
which is hilarious,
right?
And I love that show.
Right. Like, I remember watching Designing Women as a little girl in the mid 80s. If you don't know it, you should, because
Sugarbaker was
Julia Sugarbaker. That's right. Julia Sugarbaker, played by Dixie Carter, was the lead of the show. But really, it was an ensemble of 4 women for the most part. And then Hollywood. Was it Arsenio Hall? No. Who played Hollywood?
Oh, I didn't know it wasn't.
He was Hollywood in the movie Mannequin. But he played, that's what I'm saying, Hollywood. It was, I think it was Arsenio Hall. Am I wrong? Anyway, regardless,
I gotta look it up.
Yeah, please look it up, because for some reason that doesn't feel right.
Going off script in these
I know. I should have looked it up first.
No, you're good. But there is another of one of those 4 ladies. One of them ends up being the grandma in
Young Sheldon.
Yes,
and that's
she's fabulous in that.
Annie Potts. She's also the voice of Bo Peep in the Toy Story franchise.
Oh,
yeah.
Designing women.
Yeah, so it was an ensemble cast of Dixie Carter and Delta Burke, who played Julia Sugarbaker's sister, and it was Jean Smart. And Annie Potts were the four women. Meshack Taylor, that's who it was. He played.
I was like, I don't think it was it.
Yeah, that did not sound right.
Late night at that point.
That's right. It did not sound right. That's why I was like, that's not right. But he was in the movie Mannequin as Hollywood. He played opposite Andrew McCarthy and Kim Cattrall in Mannequin, which my family was also a big fan of. So that's every time I think of him on Designing Women, I think of Hollywood. But anyway, so it was a great ensemble cast set in Atlanta. These four women were, not surprisingly, interior designers, and it was an unbelievable show. And Robert Horn not only writes several episodes, but he becomes eventually the showrunner for this show, which is unbelievable. And he then went on to do other shows like Living Single, it starred Queen Latifah and Kim Fields. I mean, it was an unbelievably successful show as well. He writes lots of Disney Channel movies like The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody films and the Teen Beach things like that. He also does a little bit of dabbling on Broadway. He writes some material for one of the Dame Edna shows on Broadway. He co-writes the libretto for 13 the Musical by Jason Robert Brown in 2008. But I'm assuming what attracted him to the Hee Haw team was probably, or maybe not entirely, but primarily his work on Designing Women, right? Mm-hmm. That ear for writing Southern stories, even though he himself was not Southern at all and had not grown up in the South, but he nevertheless proved through his work on Designing Women that he could really capture that. And that was necessary for developing a musical version of Hee Haw. And so he begins to work on it. You know, as soon as they approach him in 2011, he's like, I want to do it. I love this. I loved that show. I want to do it. Now, there is nothing more that seems more disparate to me than a kid who grows up in foster care in New York City loving Hee Haw, but somehow he did. And so when he got the opportunity, he jumped at it. So he spends a couple of years doing two things. One, he's writing, you know, what might this look like? What shape might this take? How can we get our arms around this to make it entertaining, to make it true to the original without lampooning the original? So he's doing that. He's working on that, but he's also interviewing songwriters in Nashville. Of course, they're looking for a country music songwriter because this is a country music show. So he spends 2 years writing and interviewing songwriters. And in 2013, he ends his search when he interviews the songwriting team of Brandy Clark and Shane McAnally. Brandy Clark and Shane McAnally had been in Nashville for years. Probably Brandy came from Washington State in 1997. So she'd been there for a very long time. Shane's from Texas and had been there a long time as well. They'd had a lot of success. He'd won multiple Grammys. She'd been nominated for multiple Grammys. They'd written hits with Casey Musgraves. They'd written hits with lots of other people, including like Reba McEntire. I mean, they were very, very, very accomplished. And in 2013, they had both the #1 song and the #2 song on the Billboard Country Music charts concurrently with the band Perry's Better Dig 2 and Miranda Lambert's Mama's Broken Heart. And by the way, if you haven't heard Mama's Broken Heart, go give it a listen. And it's awesome. And watch the video. It is fantastic. But when that happened, country singer named Jake Owen said he didn't like those songs because they sounded like they were from musicals.
Yeah, because they're storytelling. Like
they're storytelling. And in fact, Brandy has an album, Brandy Clark. I speak of her as if I know her because I'm such a fan of her work. But Brandy has an album called 12 Stories. And it's not about the size of a building. It's about 12 different stories that she tells about 12 different characters. And it is brilliant and beautiful. So Jake Owen says this, he doesn't like it. They sound like musicals. And McAnally's like, I wouldn't even know how to write a musical if you made me. But Brandy Clark was like, wait a minute. I was in a production of The Music Man in school.
Everyone was in a production of The Music Man.
Right. Raise your hand if you were in a production
I know.
of The Music Man. But anyway, she had been in a production of The Music Man, like so many others, and decided, you know what, this is something I would like to do, is to write a musical. She, however, like probably a lot of people, assumed you had to have some kind of special training or special pedigree in order to break into that world. So it's not something she'd ever tried to do. But as soon as she and Shane McAnally were brought into the orbit of Robert Horn in 2013, that was the end of it. Like they came in, they were instantly, of course, Shane and Brandy were both big fans of the show, like Robert. They found that they were simpatico in as much as they had very similar senses of humor. So, the interview stopped then because Robert's like, these are my people. And they hit the ground running. They get to work. And what they come up with after, Brandy and Shane, they spend time, every Monday afternoon is when they blocked out time to work on this show, rather than their just normal songwriting. And they get it ready. And the first production is called Moonshine, That Hee Haw Musical. And it premieres in 2015. Appropriately enough, in Dallas, Texas. In Dallas. Yes, in Dallas. And, it was accused of being cartoonish by one critic, but Variety suggested, and I don't disagree with him, the Variety critic said it would succeed, quote, far from the Great White Way. And I take that to mean he saw that this was something that could be sustained in regional theaters and community theaters. This is the kind of something that people in the part of the country where I live, theater companies are going to want to produce a lot of, right?
Yeah, like that it would would sell very, very well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's funny to me because Dallas is not, like,
you don't think...
Well, I mean, just like regionally, you'd kind of go, why Dallas of all places? Like,
I could see it more in Atlanta.
Yeah, I think that would work, and never in the city centers. That's what I would be like. Can we move outside of Dallas? Can we move? Because the downtowns are a little less country.
Yeah. But Dolly Parton prepared her musical for Broadway, her bio musical.
Yeah.
She prepared it at Belmont University in
Tennessee,
Nashville.
Right? Nashville, yeah. Well,
yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me. The one thing that I know from doing musicals kind of all over the country is that Texas is its own, its own bear. It thinks it's country, but it's a very different country than the South.
Right. I agree.
This is not a monolith, y'all.
Right.
No, and taking it to Dallas first, it would have done better kind of smack dab in the middle of the kind of that Southern Bible Belt would have probably...
That's right. Yeah.
Like cartoonish. That does not surprise me that somebody in Dallas was like, yeah, we don't like this.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, I think you're just in the wrong place. It goes back to that thing that we say over and over and over again. Musical theater is so powerful because if you find something that works everywhere, that's the gold, because you have, it means it works all over the world, basically. Right. Because we are so different, just as a country. Every state, every region have different kind of needs and wants and desires when it comes to this kind of thing, that so much of this, you can have something that works really, really well in one region and would flop somewhere else.
That's
and so
right.
You have to kind of really rethink it.
Yeah. Yeah. So what they find is that, I wouldn't say it was panned. Variety says it would succeed far from the Great White Way. Basically, do it anywhere but Broadway and you'll be fine. Mm-hmm. But what they found was that the hee-haw kind of ethos didn't translate well to 2015, right?
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, like they just found the world has changed too much. We're too far past this to really make this work. And as Robert Horn put it, Hee Haw was a brand that didn't translate well into the current zeitgeist. They just couldn't find a way to make it palatable to modern audiences. Again, this show's been off the air for 33 years by the time Moonshine, that Hee Haw musical premieres in Dallas. So the world is a very different place, and they couldn't find a way that would both be affectionate towards the source material and yet update the source material, and it just
make
didn't
it
work.
not make fun of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
exactly.
we were just too far away from.
We're just
from
too
the
far
jokes.
away. That's right. That's right. And so it just didn't work. And they decide, everybody together collectively decides we need to put this project aside. It just didn't work. We tried it. We loved working together. The three primary creators, Robert Horn and Brandy Clark and Shane McAnally, loved working together, but they go their separate ways. One of the things that Robert Horn does is he takes up Tootsie, which I've already said is hilarious, and I highly recommend you see it if you haven't already. It is if you are like me and love to go to the theater to be entertained and to laugh your head off, you will laugh your head off at Tootsie. And then Brandy Clark, of course, and Shane McAnally go back to songwriting, and they do that very, very successfully. I encourage you to look up their catalogs because they are extensive and awesome. But one day, Robert Horn calls up Shane McAnally and he says, I miss working together. I want to pick, what do you say we pick back up the kind of hee-haw idea, but make it all original and make it our own. And we stick with that notion of kind of where we are in terms of rural America and stick with that core idea, but not worry about all the other specifics of making it a hee-haw.
Not trying to make it based on
right
rights to that.
Yeah, let's just start from scratch. And so McAnally and Shane McAnally and Brandy Clark were on board with that, and they start to work on an all original show, and they come up with this idea that is set in Cobb County, C-O-B County. Those of you who have lived in or around Atlanta will know of Cobb, C-O-B-B County,
yes.
But this ain't that. This is Cobb, C-O-B, as in corn on the county. And that's what the town's known for corn. It is hemmed in all the way around by cornfields, right? So like it is, the town exists in the middle of this cornfield. Well, what happens is there's a break in that wall of corn, and one of the girls in town, Maisie, has to go and find help. She has to go to another city, and she goes, I think it's Tampa, and they have this awesome number about how she's going to Tampa. And it's hilarious. So she has to go for help to Tampa. And anyway, that's basically the storyline.
The town is dying.
Is going to die if she doesn't get help. And she's the only one brave enough to leave the town. Nobody leaves Cobb County. You don't leave it, right? Because everything is safe and serene inside those walls of corn, right? But she is the one who's brave enough to strike out and to go get help in Tampa.
Where she finds, not the most savory of characters.
Not the most savory. She finds out that there are bad people in Tampa. Not all bad people.
I mean, they tell her.
There are some.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's a really cute, really sweet show. There's lots of corny jokes, lots of innuendos, but not innuendos that are so uncomfortable that I would feel weird taking my children who are 11 and 12, or no, now 11 and 13. I would happily take them to see this show, and they would laugh their heads off. I mean, it's really, really cute. So they write this all original update on their own, and they book the National Theater in DC for late 2020. Yeah, right, exactly.
I love talking about musicals right now, because then you just feel like, so sorry, guys.
I know. So late 2020, of course, that does not happen. But instead, they get some support from the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center in Connecticut. And in 2021, the team is able to go to the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center, which, if you aren't familiar with that, it's a space where you go to work on plays, basically, and it gives you a space to, get scenes up on their feet. It gives you a space to audition. It's just a really great thing for writers working on a show. And they developed this in 2021 at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center. Robert Horn talks about how all the creators were stuck in the same Airbnb and they were able just to, get it done, right? All of these people have different careers. They all have lots of projects going on, but this gave them a time and a place to all be together in the same room and to just hammer it out and to see, let's bring some actors in and put it up on its feet and see what works and what doesn't. And so that's what they did. And after that 2021 intensive at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center, they then play, this is an unusual, well, maybe not so unusual now that I think about it, but it's not a theater company I was ever familiar with until I was following the development of Shucked, the Pioneer Theater Company in Utah.
Yeah, never heard of it.
2022. Yeah, same. They, of course.
What a get, though. Now
Right?
everybody has heard their name because it has
I've
to
never
be.
heard of it.
It's by copyright, has to be in all the playbills now.
Yeah,
Good for
yeah.
them. That is a
Yes.
great strategic move. Good job, executive director
Yes.
of Pioneer Theater Company.
That's right. So I'm following this again by way of my super fandom of Brandy Clark, and I'm like, wait a minute, where in Utah? I've never heard of a musical being developed in Utah or having its world premiere in Utah. And to be honest, I probably should have dug into that more deeply to find out what exactly was the pitch from the Pioneer. Maybe the
Or
Pioneer
did they
Theater
know
Company
someone?
just said, we'll take you. Maybe that was it. I don't know.
Or we know somebody who knows somebody who needs
Possibly,
something. That
yeah,
happens.
possibly. I don't know the exact connection, and I should look into
Utah
that.
is not known as a great place to develop new work.
Right.
Like you want new work development is done in specific cities, not because, well, literally only because the audiences are used to new work.
That's right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like used to things that sometimes may have some rough edges and are able to
right.
use their brain and go, oh, I really like this. I think there's still some things to work out, but blah, blah, blah. Like you have to train an audience to be a good audience for new work because you need the good feedback from them, but you also don't need them going and trashing it on social media so that it never gets off the ground. So that's why people do it in more safe spaces.
Yeah. So. And Utah too, I would think if you're trying to be in any way edgy, that would be a tricky place to try to be edgy, right? That would be a tricky place for that. So, we've talked, if you want to hear more about trying out, I remember talking about that pretty extensively with Beautiful, the Carole King musical in that episode, which tried out in San Francisco because it was the feedback of audience members that changed the whole shape of that show.
Yeah.
And it was the feedback of that audience in San Francisco. But we've also talked about Chicago and Boston as big places to try out.
DC is another one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Atlanta, for specific musicals, did very, very well on their tryout. It's like it's having somebody who knows the audience and knows the shows and knows, okay, this is where we take these things.
Yeah. Atlanta has a really good audience. I was shocked. I lived in Atlanta for several years after college and was shocked at the breadth of theater happening in Atlanta. It's a very vibrant theater scene. But I digress. And now film. They're doing tons of film in Georgia. But that's not what this is about. This is about Shucked. And Shucked plays the Pioneer Theater Company in Utah in 2022. And it's very successful. Like, there was no time at all before Shucked closed in Utah and was announced that it was going to Broadway. And a big time reason for that was because a man named Jack O'Brien, which is a name that may be familiar to listeners of this podcast. And if it's not, when I tell you what he's done, you'll be like, oh yeah. But Jack O'Brien sees it, and Jack O'Brien's like, I think this needs to go to Broadway. Now, Jack O'Brien had worked around Broadway since 1965. He had been the artistic director of the Old Globe Theater Company, probably best known, though not even close to the only major thing he's done, but he was the director of Hairspray, the musical, in 2000. Was it 2002 or 2003? One of whichever year that premiered. He had directed one of my all-time favorite musicals, the 1994 revival of Damn Yankees. He had directed The Full Monty. He had done a ton of work on Broadway and by this point is an elder statesman on Broadway, but really known very much like my guy Casey Nicholaw, known for dealing very well with comedy, right? Like very good at comedic shows. And when he saw this in Utah at the Pioneer Theater Company, he thought, this is ready for Broadway. But he did think it needed a little bit more heft to the story. So there was some reworking that was done. In fact, he called the story so campy it would float away. And it was his yeah, right. Just a little too heavy on the jokes, not enough plot.
There has to be some heart to it.
There has to be some heart. That's right.
Yeah. But if he thinks it's ready for Broadway, he thinks we need one song.
Yeah.
Like, he's not talking about such a huge rewrite that we would need to do another
That's right.
tryout.
Exactly. He didn't say, let's go back to the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center. He didn't say, why don't we try National Theater in D.C.? He was like, let's book Broadway.
No. You need one song here.
That's right.
And sometimes that's what you need. You need somebody to come in and be like, you just one thing here and then it'll fix.
Yeah. And he did that. So he sees the show in 2022. I believe it was summertime that it ran. Just thinking back, recollecting as I was following this, I believe it was summer. And then he comes in and he's like, let's get it ready. Okay, so talk about quick turnarounds. Tracey, it premieres at the Nederlander Theater in April of 2023.
Well, first of all, being able to get a theater that fast.
Thank you. Yes, at that time, think about this, guys. All of those shows, because we've said it how many times in the last several episodes, it was supposed to premiere in 2020.
Backlog of,
and then you've got all those shows that didn't get to premiere in 2020 and didn't get to premiere in 2021, and now they're waiting to go, and they get the Nederlander, and it probably, to be honest, was in large part due to the name of Jack O'Brien. Like that gave it some weight. What show was I? Oh, was it last week? I can't remember. Were we talking about a show Mike Nichols? When Mike Nichols in the Spamalot episode.
Oh, yes.
We talked about Mike Nichols signing on as director and how all of a sudden
things started opening up. Yeah.
This might be something worth, investing in, right? It's got Mike Nichols attached to it. And remember, we talked about Mike Nichols' name doing the same thing when he produced Annie way back in episode whatever it was.
Our longest
3,
episode.
Whatever it was. Longest episode to date of the Dr. Broadway podcast. So the show opens in April of 2023 on Broadway. The reviews are actually, they're mixed, but warmer than you would have expected from, a musical that has at its core the kind of story that this has at its core. I read one review that said that laughs come with machine gun like frequency, and that's absolutely true. But some reviewers criticized it for that. Like, it's too silly. There's too much corny, if you will, jokes, and other reviewers liked it. Reviewers, for the most part, loved the music of Shane McAnally and Brandy Clark. So there was a lot of positive that came out of these reviews, though not necessarily gushing, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Although in Variety, it was called the best musical of the Broadway season, which is high praise, particularly from Variety.
Yeah.
So the show is nominated for 9 Tony Awards. It wins 1 for Alex Newell,
who was fabulous,
who has an unbelievably amazing show-stopping number in the show. I recommend you listen to the cast recording. And then the show closes in January of 2024. It had played 327 performances. And while that does not sound, certainly isn't a long run in terms of today's Broadway, but in terms of a lot of the shows that we're seeing, the new shows, that's a pretty long run. Again, think about Spamalot. We just talked about the Spamalot revival. We talked about Spamalot last week on last week's episode, and mentioning the Spamalot revival, that revival ran for like 164 episodes.
Episodes?
Right? What's that?
Episodes?
I'm sorry. 164 performances.
There we go.
I'm tired. We're almost done.
Oh my gosh,
right?
we're now thinking this is a TV show. I was like, wait.
Thank you for correcting me.
That was funny.
164 whatever it was.
Yeah, they're
performances.
They're not running as long.
They're not.
Which is why it's like you can't have that big capitalization. And this
right.
What was it capitalized at? Do you remember?
You know, I didn't ever see that,
couldn't
but
figure that out.
It wasn't outrageous.
No, and it doesn't have like the Grand Ole Opry behind it anymore. So,
right,
right. I mean, it's fun. It's gonna be. It's a good show that's going to be around. That's going to continue. It's going to, make the regional circuit.
I think regional community theaters. This
colleges
is going to go
and universities.
gangbusters.
Like it's going to be around. You're going to be able to see it for a while.
Yes, and it's just recently been announced that they're turning it into a feature film.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which surprised me when I saw that.
Well, but that's, again, the cyclical nature of the history of Broadway. Right after the Golden Age, we start putting everything on film, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing is kind of happening. We just start putting all this stuff on film. And part of it, that is a good thing for Broadway overall. Even when you're like surprised by like, is there a wider audience for this that's not going to go see it live, but would see it on film? And I think this actually might be a good candidate for that, because that's where people fall in love with musical theater,
right? When
they're little and they're tiny, and then they follow it for the rest of their lives. It's like being able to have access to it in several different ways,
right?
So
this one has, by standards in the current Broadway milieu, a pretty healthy run. It's running now on tour. Like everything on tour, it's going great because people, as Tracey has said before, they bought into subscriber packages so they could be guaranteed Hamilton tickets, and then they found out they really liked what they were seeing and they kept their subscriptions. Yeah. So, Broadway around the country is going great in terms of national tours that we're talking about.
It also
this is one of those.
A very pretty balanced perspective from at least from what I'm reading and from what I'm seeing from audience response. Yeah. It's like some people, I was kind of laughing. I was like, some people are like, I walked out, this is ridiculous. Oh my goodness. And it's like, but then it's, oh gosh, I've got to find this quote. Shucked is a new musical that proves sometimes tearing down a few walls rather than growing them is the only way to preserve our way of life. And it's like, so you've got some of that, and then some of the more kind of preservationist idea. Yeah. And so they're trying to keep it from like conservative liberal and make it preservation versus, progress kind of thing. And I think that's going to keep, that's not going to polarize a show. Does that make sense?
Exactly.
And you have to think about that now, don't you?
Absolutely.
Most definitely. If you have too political of a message right now, it makes it really,
you
really
draw a line in the sand, man.
Difficult.
So absolutely it does. And this one, this one is, there's no, you're not on edge because you're like, oh no, is this going to get uncomfortable? It's just fun. It's just absolutely fun. And it definitely, the way that it approaches the topic is, like you said, it's like, just because we've always done something one way doesn't mean we have to keep doing it that way. Right? Mm-hmm. We can do new things and we can experience new things, like Tampa, like a trip to Tampa.
But then it's like you cast Alex Newell.
Right. Exactly.
And then you've got, another, a completely other layer of cultural discussion.
Yeah.
Around, there's just so much to unpack here that people, it does a brilliant job of kind of staying away from drawing a line in the sand. And but yet including everyone. And we need that today. We need people to be included.
Right.
And
I think that one of the answers to that is that, all three, and Robert Horn mentions this in interviews about the piece, but all three of the creators are openly out creators. Yeah. And you've got to think about Shane McAnally and Brandy Clark as openly gay writers of musical theater, of country music.
Country music.
That's big, right?
Yeah.
And so Robert Horn, that was, of course, one of the things that attracted him to them was that the three of them all felt like they'd been outliers. And this show has a lot of those themes of outliers. And that doesn't just pertain to, sexuality, but it pertains to, we all in some way are outliers of something, right? And so they're tapping into that common experience that for them looked one way, but for people in the audience may look this way or that way. But nevertheless, it's still at its core where we didn't feel like we belonged somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. And they're really successful at tapping into that. And it's just a lovely, hilarious show that is deeply entertaining. So if you're like me and you go to the theater to laugh and to have a good time, this is your show. See it. Don't miss it. It's great. And if you're not into that kind of show, then okay, don't see the show, but listen to the music of Shane McAnally and Brandy Clark, because I will tell you this, my girl Brandy can write a song. I love her so much.
I know.
I will say this, before I even knew about this, so this was years ago, before I knew anything about Moonshine the musical, I was listening to her music and I was thinking, she should make this should be a musical. Like her 12 Stories album, that should be like, these are all like, I could see this being one woman going through all these different things, or I could see it being 12 women. But these are stories of life, and they are so brilliant. So that she brings that into what she does with Shucked. They're working, like I said, they're adapting this for feature film, but they're also, this team is working together on another musical. I don't know the specifics of it. I don't know that it's even been announced. I just know that they loved working together and are hoping that they can catch lightning in a bottle all over again.
Because this one went pretty well for them, and this is a great like second outing for them. Your second show is always so much harder than the first, and this one ended up paying off so much more than the first, so it's really going to be exciting to see what they do next. Because they've seemed to have figured out how to work together, and that's always what you want to see, That's really kind of fun. It's going to be fun to see what they do.
Well, and I wonder, too, if we've got this, going around the country. It's just recently played Broadway. It's going around the country with country music writers. We've got Dolly Parton's biomusical coming to Broadway, which was developed in Nashville. I'm wondering if we're going to start to see more and more country songwriters kind of jump into the Broadway pool. Who knows? But certainly country music songwriting has for a long, long time been about telling stories.
Yeah, and it lends
so it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, very much so. More so than some of the pop music, so
yeah. But then look at Anne Juliet and
okay,
how well that's going.
Oh, Jesus, it's crazy.
So basically, if you're a songwriter, write a show.
Yeah, I know.
On that note, that'll do it for this episode of the Dr. Broadway podcast. Tune in next time when we'll be talking about 6, which, y'all, is the last episode of season 2.
Yes, it is.
Until then, connect with us via email at hello@drbroadway.com or on Instagram, YouTube, or TikTok at Dr. B.